Hey everybody, welcome to the final star ratings. We have the last two classes plus the neutrals this episode. Let's start off with the Warlock package. And I think Warlock has got some really interesting stuff, right? They have one package which kind of revolves around this toxic Warlock package where you get barrels of sludge and you destroy them or discard them from your hand, destroy them from your deck, and you get to do damage to the lowest health enemy. Okay, interesting. Do I think it's going to be good? Not really. I think it's going to be somewhere in the tier 4 range. I still don't think Discard Warlock is quite there yet. I think that is going to be how you run the deck primarily, as playing these discard cards. Trolley Problem is actually insane value for the cost. If you discard a barrel of sludge, which is most likely going to be your lowest cost spell, you get 6/6 of stats, and you do a little bit of damage. Like, the quick draw effect doesn't really matter. That's a pretty, good payoff, but I just think the whole package, it just won't quite come to fruition. You also have to bear in mind right now, it's competing with the Warlock packages of Thaddeus Warlock and like the Sargeras Control Warlock deck. They're sitting somewhere around the high tier 2, low tier 1 region. I do think adding Reno to the meta is going to make Thaddeus Warlock big sad, because you're going to really mess up your undead Deadpool, so to speak. So I actually think the Thaddeus Warlock deck will drop off significantly. So I think there is room to squeeze another deck in there, but I don't think the Toxic Sludge deck will be it. I should also mention that Waste Remover might go into a Zoo deck as well. I nearly gave it 3 stars because it's a 4-mana 7/7, and Zoo doesn't really care if they destroy the bottom 3 cards of their deck. But I don't think a Warlock Zoo deck is going to be a thing, therefore I kept it in the 2-star range. Similarly, I think Pop Guard could find its way into Fatigue Imps, but Fatigue Imps isn't even tier 3 right now, so again, I'll keep you in the 2-star range. But I'd love for this deck to work, and I'm definitely going to try it on the opening day anyway, just to see how it rolls. But I can't help but think it's like a mid-rangey deck that you can kind of play around a little bit by, just going wide on your board. Therefore, it won't be good. Fracking, I think, is actually so bad that it won't even see play in this deck, so I've given it 1 star. It's 1 mana, draw a card, destroy 2 cards from the bottom of your deck. There's no guarantee you'll get all your sludges on the bottom of the deck, so sometimes you're just going to be forced to destroy a card that you don't want to, and 1 mana, draw 1, I sleep. Then, the final package for Warlock, and this is the only excavation package I'm actually excited for. I think it is the one that is going to change the meta, and I think this will go into a tier 1 deck. So, all of these, 5 stars. Why? Well, Tram Conductor Jerry is such insane value for the excavation that it would almost be worth running bad excavation cards for it. Mohawk Drillfist, though, not a bad excavate card, right? It's a 4-mana 4/5 taunt with, draw a card on the death rattle. Not the best, but not terrible, right? Smokestack is basically Mortal Coil. Mortal Coil sees some play in decks. But the really nice thing about all of this is the payoff card for this, Damn, I can't remember which one it is again. Azurite creature steals 10 health from your opponent and you get the 10 health. It is not do 10 damage, you're stealing their max HP. I think that card is going to be so disruptive that an archetype is going to form around that card and potentially bouncing it back to your hand. And what do I think is going to form around it? I think the Abyssal Curse deck will form around it. You'll have this Control Warlock deck with Abyssal Curses. You'll still have Sargeras and stuff like that in it. And your dream is going to be to bounce back this Azurite card or copy it 3 times to kill your opponent, because this will go under armor, so Mage is going to be very unhappy with it because they typically gain armor. Warrior's going to be unhappy with it because they gain a lot of armor. The only decks that can really play around it are Death Knight decks that can generate more max health. And then any Renthal deck that might run at 35 instead of 30 health. And I think it's going to pair so nicely with the Abyssal Curses. The Abyssal Curse deck, just before Bran rotated out of the core set, and we also lost some of the big Imp enablers. The Hybrid Imp deck was one of the tier 1 decks of the time. That ran the Abyssal Curse package with an aggressive Imp frontline, so you had to deal with your Imps, which would leave your hand empty for you to fill it with Abyssal Curses. One of the things that hurt that deck, as I said, so much was losing Brand, because it kind of affected your reach for your Abyssal Curses. You always feel like you're an Abyssal Curse away from defeating your opponent when you lose. If you take 10 max health off them, they can't heal back through that again. You are just lowering that range down and down, improving your reach for killing with Abyssal Curses. And I think that is where the package is going to gel so nicely. Because if you don't get the combo for, you bounce back this treasure 3 times to kill your opponent, you might just do it 2 times and then finish them off with 2 or 3 curses. I definitely think that could be a thing. I think the package will shift in that direction. So much so that I don't think you'll even run Reno in it. I think you're kind of Reno-proof, so to speak. I guess Moab Drillfist isn't quite Reno-proof, but you kind of get my drift here. Once you've got this creature, your treasure, Reno can't affect it because you've got to try and keep it in your hand as much as you can. So I think you do have some protection for that. He also only gives you armor, so he also doesn't improve your survivability versus this combo. I really think this will be a tier 1 deck, and I think it's going to basically replace where Thaddeus is right now. I'd also mention that I think with Reno coming out, I think the typical control Warlock list is going to be changed quite considerably, because I think they're both 2 of the big losers. If you lose Sargeras to Reno, you're kind of just effed. Not quite true, but it was so hard to deal with the 2, 3, 4 imps with taunt. That's typically what you ended up with every single turn. And then if they became, Lord J of the Burning Legion, then it was even harder, right? Because you'd be dealing with a 6/6 plus 2, 3, 4s, and it was just backbreaking. Now you can break the Twisting Nether, so the 3/4 stop coming, and it kind of means this inevitability is no longer there again. I think, therefore, you might actually consider running Control Warlock now as a Highlander deck, so that you can put Reno in your deck, because if you go up against a Warlock that's done that and you haven't, they're going to outvalue eventually. And what you'll do instead is you'll put stuff like Photograph Fizzle in there to copy your Sargeras, so you can play them again after you've done a Reno turn or your opponent's done the Reno turn. And you'll go for big value that way. But as I said, I think this is going to struggle versus this Excavation package. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it works. I think this is going to be the big new hotness of decks on the opening day. Finally, I was going to say, but not least, but it is kind of a bit of a least. We're going for Warrior. Now, Warrior was in a bit of a rough spot going into this expansion, in the sense that it has 2 tier 1 decks, so it's not a rough spot. It's just that they would have to release something so absolutely insane to usurp one of these 2 decks. And I don't think they've got it. They have the Excavation package, their treasure, which is the Azerite Oxrite. I think I remember this one. Generates you 2 8-cost minions, and you get a 4-mana 5/5 with it, which is pretty good value. Unfortunately, the Excavate card, Black Charge, is so bad that I think the Excavate package just won't work with this deck. Similarly, I think Slagmore the Slumbering is more like Slagmore the Bumbling, because it's going to take too long to get up, and it's just going to be cleared by like one eensy-weensy spell or Reno. So I'm giving these 2 cards 1 star. Now, I did postulate when I did these reveals that maybe Control Warrior or Odin Control Warrior might go to a Reno package again, just because Reno is such an insane control card that it might be worth running one-offs of everything to make that dream a reality. In which case, if you do that, I do think Reinforced Plating and Badlands Brawl would make this deck. Even if you don't get the Excavation twice, and I think you would run 2 Excavate cards, I think you'd run the Reinforced Plating plus the Rat. The neutral one, the 2 mana 1/1. You'd run both of those, and if you got the Brawl to always win with the Badlands Brawler, great. If not, it's 7 mana Brawl. You're already losing one of your Brawls, so you'd like to kind of replace it with like for like, and I think you would see play that way. Unfortunately, I think the package won't actually work, because I keep saying, like in the build-up to all of these episodes, that any deck that you would Renthal, you might want to Reno it as a Highlander deck, because it kind of suggests you have 10 other cards you'd be willing to put into your deck. The one exception to this rule, because there are Renthal Odin Warriors out there, but the one exception to this rule is if you have a core backbone of your deck that requires you to have 2 offs of cards. And I think Odin Warrior has that. I think you have to have the Rift package in with your Odin Warrior. Mainly because you have the tutor for a minion, and it's so good for drawing Odin from the deck that I think you have to run the Rifts. And it hurts the deck too much to run only 3 Rifts and not the 6 Rifts, which gives you like 4 attempts at drawing minions, potentially. Without the Rift package, which I think you would have to do for Reno Odin Warrior, and I think some people will do this, you're going to have issues drawing Odin. You're basically going to be running a Control Warrior list. And before Odin came out, Control Warrior was a laughing stock, therefore I don't think that deck is going to be particularly strong. So I've given both of these 2 stars. I think it's going to see testing in that, but it won't come to fruition. Then we have 2 other Control Warrior cards. We have Misfire and Boomboss Thogron. Thogron is a lot of great disruption. Unfortunately, I think he's going to be too slow, and you'd kind of have to build your deck around it to redraw the TNTs to destroy your opponent's cards. And as I said, maybe it'll be a thing because, you know, I have said a lot of combo decks are going to be really strong. But I just think this is too slow a disruption card. Like, it's, you know, 8 mana before you play. It's probably going to take you another turn for you to start playing with your deck, shuffling your deck around to draw the TNTs. You're probably going to be dead by the time you've actually done this. And there's no guarantee you're going to hit the correct card, right? It's not like it's specifying a minion or a spell. You're just hitting a random card. So you might have, you know, 1 in 7, 1 in 8 chances to hit combo pieces. I just think it's going to be a pipe dream. Misfire is actually very unfortunate. I think this card is really good. It's 6 damage in a 2-cost card, which is really good value. And the quick draw effect, if you don't get it, so be it. But if you get the quick draw effect, that's pretty efficient removal. Sadly though, I'm giving both of these 2 stars. I think Control Warrior list with the Odin package, unfortunately, they have a better option in there because they want to forge for Ignis, and therefore they will run Sanitize and the Fire one. The other Fire one, I can't remember its name now, but the one that does 5 damage then, 5 damage split amongst all enemies. So I don't think Misfire will make that deck. Therefore 2 stars, but one to watch out for in the future. The final package is this Taunt Warrior Tempo package. And I mentioned at the time that I didn't see this working. Maybe you would try and run it with the Menageries because they have different tags on them. But the Battle Pickaxe was a really big payoff. I kind of saw it as the Eaglehorn bow from Hunter, where you would put secrets in your deck just so the bow would get extra charges, so you could keep going to the face with it. And I think that is the most exciting thing about this package is the Battle Pickaxe that could really smoke some people down. And one other thing I didn't really think of at the time was that Warrior still has access to some weapon buffing cards right now, like Weapons Expert. So there is a world where you buff your weapon up to like 5 attack or 6 attack instead. And that hitting you every turn at like 6 attack is a really scary thought, a really scary prospect. Unfortunately, I don't think the package will come to fruition, so I've given the taunt cards all 2 stars. I think it's going to be too slow. You're competing with Enrage Warrior right now, which kind of does something very similar. It almost always has a weapon up, but you build your board and make a really strong board full of minions, and then you can finish people off with Remoria. Is it Remoria? Something like that, the weapon. And you can kill your opponent. I think that deck's actually going to get hit a little bit by the addition of Reno, because Reno might just come online just in time to clear that giant board of minions that are otherwise difficult to deal with. I think this will be a tier 4 deck. I think people will play it. I think it's actually going to feel pretty decent. But one of the other real, like, hindrances of this deck is Rust-Rot Viper exists, and people will just keep breaking the Battle Pickaxe. By the way, I'm giving this Battle Pickaxe 3 stars instead. It's going a little bit against my grading system, but I really think you need to watch out for this card in the future, because if Warrior in the future gets any weapon buffing cards, you might start running taunt cards just to get durability on the Battle Pickaxe and just smoke your opponent down. Also, in 1 set time, you're going to lose Nathria, which means Enraged Warrior won't be a thing. You're going to lose the Sunken City, which I think means Rust-Rot Viper's rotating out from what I remember. In which case, your weapon might live longer and this package might improve considerably in 1 set time. So it's kind of a watch this space moment. I will say as well, though, the current weapon buff cards will also rotate out for Warriors. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. Anyway, I typically think that Odin Warrior and Enraged Warrior will stay kings through this set. Finally, we go to the neutral cards, and we're going to do this as quick fire rounds. Here are the 5-star neutrals, I think. We have Dryscale Deputy, Saloon Brewmaster, Kobold Miner, Miracle Salesman, and Reno Lone Ranger. Reno Lone Ranger is going to be the standout card of this set. The one thing that's going to make the decks all differentiate from what they are right now is this card. There are some decks that are going to go into Highlander mode just so they can run Reno in the deck, including archetypes that are already existing. I think Rainbow Mage might try and do this. I think Control Priest will definitely do it because they also have got some additional Highlander support. I think Warlock might do it even without the Highlander support. And I think this is going to hurt some of the big decks up there. Like, as I said, Thaddeus Warlock, I think, is going to hate this card. Big Rogue is going to hate this card, so certain decks are just going to tumble down the ratings. Certain decks are going to rise from nowhere, and it's all going to be thanks to Reno. For the rest of them, I think Kobold Miner will see play in a lot of decks, especially ones which are trying to make this Excavate package work. I think it will go into the Excavate Warlock package, therefore I've given it 5 stars. But this probably will be the most ubiquitous Excavate card you're going to see. Dryscale Deputy, I just really like the card, to be honest with you. This might not be 5 stars, but I struggle to not put it in my deck right now. It's such a fun card. As I said, you're probably going to be running Highlanders, which means you're going to be running one of your spells. If Dryscale Deputy duplicates one of those spells, it could be a huge amount of value. So, I like it. I think at the very least it's going to go into Naga Demon Hunter, which I think is going to be a tier 2 deck, so I could argue it's going to be 4 stars at the very least. But I think other decks will run this. I think Rainbow Mage might even run it, so 5 stars. Saloon Brewmaster, again, this is a little bit of possibly cope, possibly this will end up being too slow. I think this will go into your Abyssal Curse Warlock deck. I think this is going to be one of the cards used to bounce your treasure back. There are other Brewmasters out there, and maybe they are better because you don't really care about the stats too much. But I think you might end up running all of them. I'm not entirely certain yet. I've not fully put that list together. But I think you're going to run like Zola. I think you're going to run at least a duplicate of one of the Brewmasters. And why not the Saloon Brewmaster, right? Maybe you want to bounce another one of your Excavate cards back instead, get the stats, play the card again. And maybe that's a good enough value, right? And then the final one, which you might be going like, what the fuck are you talking about? Miracle Salesman, 1 mana 2/2. Death Rattle, get a Snake Oil. This, I think, is going to go into Rainbow Mage. And I think it's going to go into certainly a Reno Rainbow Mage. Because as I said before, Snake Oil is a 0 mana, 0 damage spell. And who would love a 0 mana, 0 damage spell? That's right, Sif would. Because Sif will spell damage that up and turn it into a good spell. And unlike all the other spells that Mage runs right now, which have a mana cost associated with it, that has no mana cost, so you can just weave it into your Sif turn very easily. Also, as it's tradable, if you don't have Sif, you can generate the Snake Oil and just start trading it and just try and like search for Sif. So I think for that one reason alone, that it's going to go into a deck that currently is probably sitting at the top of the tree of all the decks. I think it is a 5-star card. It's also pretty good, 1 mana 2/2. Good stats. In 4-star land, Eroded Sediment, Azurite Giant, and Dang Blasted Elemental. I think these will all go into Elemental Shaman. I think that's going to be a tier 2 deck. So all of these got 4 stars. I also think they might see some playing Elemental Mage as well. Maybe not all of them, but some of them will. And that's going to sit around the tier 3 region. Whelp Wrangler and Sunspot Dragon. Again, Sunspot Dragon, you might be saying, what are you thinking? I think they will both go into the Highlander Dragon Druid deck, especially Whelp Wrangler, that will generate whelps that help you always have multiple dragons in your hand for your dragon cards to pay off with. Sunspot Dragon, I made a list for this Highlander Dragon deck, and as the final card in the deck, I put Sunspot Dragon in there. At the very least, again, it's tradable, so you can cycle it to try and find your Rheastraza. Druid has some issues with, board control. Sometimes you're going to draw that late into the game, and you're going to play as a 6 mana deal 6 and gain 6 life, which is something else Druid can sometimes struggle with, is, staying alive. So I think it will be in that deck, but for how long, I don't know. But just because that deck is going to be a strong tier 2 contender, I put Sunspot Dragon in the 4-star range. Other than this deck, it's going to be a 1-star arena card, okay? So, again, you might be saying my rating system's dumb, but hey, I'm going to stick with it. Finally, Azurite Chain Gang. This is an interesting one. I think the payoff of this is potentially insanely big, especially if you buff this card. There are some hand buff decks going to be out there. I think the Beast Hunter decks will be running hand buff cards and may run Azerite Chain Gang in that deck. Death Knight has Unholy packages which have hand buffs. They also have Unholy Blood packages which also have a hand buff. And I think this card will see play in both of those decks. And you might even want to run your bounce cards with this Azerite Chain Gang to just backbreak your opponents, right? That's a lot of stats. Even if you just put 1/1 on this, you're playing for 4 mana if you get the quick draw effect off as well. You're getting 9/12 of stats with Taunt. That is disgusting. So I think this will see enough play in enough decks, and I think some of them will be in the tier 2 range. The Azerite Chain Gang I'm going to give 4 stars to as well. 3-star land. We have Bunny Stomper, Cattle Rustler, Burrow Buster, Thunderbringer, and Howdy Finn. Bunny Stomper, I think, is going to go into Beast Hunter, especially the Highlander deck, and has some really nice synergy, especially with the Colossi, the Hydrolagon, or whatever it's called, Hydrolagon. It's basically a guaranteed board clear with those 2 cards. 8 mana board clear, and you get a big board yourself. That is going to be a disgusting turn, so I think that's going to potentially be a tier 2 deck. So you may be saying I'm undervaluing this, but I don't think it's a guaranteed card that will make this beast deck. But I'm going to run it, at the very least. Cattle Rustler, similarly, I'm not entirely certain it's going to get into the beast deck. It probably will do, but it's not a guarantee. There's also then a combo package that I mentioned for Death Knight that might run this, but I don't think that'll be tier 3 either. So I think both these cards had a shout to be 4 stars, at the very least. It kind of depends on how you believe this value Beast Hunter Highlander deck is going to be. And I'm currently putting in like tier 2, but I'm not entirely convinced, and I'm not convinced that these cards will both see play in it. But it will, at the very least, see some testing. Burrow Buster, I think of the neutral excavate cards, i.e. the 2 of them. This is the weaker of the 2. Therefore, I don't think it's guaranteed to be ran in all excavate decks, and I think most of the excavate packages are bad. I don't think I'm going to run it in my excavate Warlock, but I could be wrong. I need to check that list again later. So I put it in the 3-star range. Thunderbringer, we've already had access to this card. It's seen playing tier 3, tier 2 decks-ish. I think it's going to get way worse when Reno comes out, but I've kept it in the 3-star range. And then finally, Howdy Finn, I think Murloc Shaman will be tier 3, and it will get into that deck. 2 stars. We have Tram Mechanic, Trapdoor Spider, Greedy Partner, Gold Panner, Flint Firearm, Snake Oil Stellar, and then Kingpin put on his Ogre Gang Outlaws. All of these I put in the 2-star range. Basically, I think they're going to be tested but not make tier 3 decks at the very least. Tram Mechanic, I think, will go into the Toxic Waste Warlock deck, but I don't think that's going to be great. Trapdoor Spider, I think, is going to be too easy to play around, but some control decks may run that to, try and stay alive into the late game. Greedy Partner, I think, might actually get into some rogue decks, but I don't think... Well, firstly, I don't think Well Rogue is going to work right now. If it does, that card will certainly go into that deck. But are there enough 2-drop rogue cards in typical rogue decks right now to put Greedy Partner into it? I'm not entirely certain. There are a decent number, so maybe, just maybe, it'll sneak into those decks. Gold Panda, I think, will be tested in some sort of aggro deck, but I don't think it's going to cut the mustard, sadly. Flint Firearm. This was a card I couldn't really evaluate at the time until we saw all the quick draw cards. We've now seen all the quick draw cards. Most of the quick draw cards are more controller orientated. It's reactive cards to stuff your opponent's got on the board. So you might run Flint in a deck that doesn't have great control cards, but you want to go into the late game. Our maybe a Contraband Rogue deck. So I think Flint might see play in that type of deck. Do I think they're going to be particularly good? Not really. What control combo decks do I think are going to be good? Mage, Warlock, Warrior. Do they need Flint Firearm in those decks for extra control? I don't think so. But maybe if you're running as a Highlander, you might slot a Flint in there. At the very least, he's going to see some testing. And potentially can give you some pretty big value. Snake Oil Seller. Again, I've got this here as a tech card. I think it's a tech card versus Pure Paladin. I think Pure Paladin is going to get so hurt by Reno that you're not going to need the Snake Oil Seller. But at the very least, some people will probably put it in their ETC, so I get it in the 2-star range. And then finally, Kingpin Pud and his Ogre Gang friends. They're obviously a package that are going to be run together. They're going to live and die by the package. I've not really thought of a great way to abuse this, therefore I've put it in the 2-star range. Just about the only class I've thought of maybe trying to do something with this is Demon Hunter, weirdly, who have a lot of access to cards that allow you to draw rush minions, and also have synergies with like weapons and attacking multiple times. So maybe there's going to be some sort of Demon Hunter Ogre Gang deck, but again, Reno exists, right? If you get your board cleared with Reno, you just lose. It's really like, here's my board, I'm putting down all of my chips, all of my cards, beat me. And if you beat them, they're just going to go, well done, GG and bottom right you, so I just don't think it's going to be a thing, sadly. And then finally, the Lone Star Rangers. Cactus Rager, Line Dance Partner, Rowdy Partner, Gaslight Gatekeeper, Horseshoe Slinger, Bounty Board, Gattlesnake, Hiding Duelist, and Sheriff Barrelbrim, all 1 stars. Cactus Rager is like all the other Ragers. Kind of a meme, honestly. Line Dance Partner, I don't think there's going to be any classes out there that run enough 3-cost cards to justify running your Line Dance Partner. You'd probably want to run it in some sort of zoo aggro deck. Random 3-cost minions aren't what they used to be. A lot of them are understated, so... And she's also understated herself, so I just don't think that card is going to be good enough. Rowdy Partner, again, the higher you get on the card cost for this, the harder it is to activate. Do I think a 4-mana 4/3 deal 4 damage without the restriction would see play in Standard? I'm not certain, so I don't think this will see play. Gaslight Gatekeeper, I think if there's any reason to shuffle your deck, which would have been for the quick draw effects, this card will see some play. But I don't think the quick draw cards are good enough that you would like pack them all into your deck, that you would want the Gaslight Gatekeeper, if you know what I mean. However, in the future, if there is a card that like is, let's say, when you draw this card, X effect happens, Gaslight Gatekeeper will probably see play in a deck like that. So I'm going to say watch the space on this one. I don't think it will see play, but it could see play in the future. And in fact, it could be a core card in a deck in the future. Horseshoe Slinger, 1-star as well. I just think it's too bad, honestly. The quick draw effect is nice, but are you going to always quick draw a 3-mana 2/2 mech? No. And if you don't quick draw it is really bad. Similarly, Bounty Board to the Gaslight Gatekeeper. I don't think there's enough quick draw cards out there to warrant running a Bounty Board to discount by 1. Maybe there's going to be a combo in the future with the Legendary tag on it as well, and the tradable, where the 1-mana discount actually makes a difference for you playing multiple tradable cards into a Legendary and it one-shots your opponent, but I don't see it right now, so Bounty Board 1-star. Gattlesnake is just bad, Hiding Duelist is terrible, and Sheriff Barrelbrim. Sadly, I am looking at your barrel being half empty than half full. I know the barrel means the hat, but I'm just being silly. I'm making silly jokes. I think the only class that would typically, play around your health pool like that card is it's probably Warlock, right? Warlock's package, though, I think is going to be stealing health from your opponent, i.e. you're probably going to want to stay at higher health. Therefore, I think Barrelbrim is not going to be particularly good in Warlock, and therefore the card won't be good. Also, the Badlands Jail, which makes cards go dormant, is good against single-target minions. And I don't think there's any good single-target minions out there right now. I know that's a big sweeping statement, but most of them are battle cry effects and not on death rattles or, aura effects. That's kind of what I really mean when I say single-target minion. Therefore, I think Barrelbrim is basically going to be like... It's like Freeze with steps associated with it. And then it's understated, so... No, I don't think it's going to work. Anyway, that's all the star ratings now. That's the entire set's all done. On the 9th and 10th, I believe, Hearthstone are going to be doing some Theorycraft streams. I'm not going to be one of the streamers, but if you want to see players that are much better than me try and incorporate these cards into their decks, because they have to use at least 10 of them, I believe, why not check those out? And I assume there's going to be some drops associated with it. And I might do one final video of my top rated cards of this set. I'm not entirely certain yet, because let's be honest with you, Reno is going to be number 1. It's so disgustingly strong compared to the rest of them. I guess actually what I'll do now is, what are my thoughts of the set as a whole? Because I know people have been ragging on this set running up to its release, saying it's super underwhelming, it's really weak. And I don't fully agree, but I don't fully disagree. I don't think this is the strongest set that's ever been released, and I think that's actually not a bad thing. Even a Badlands thing, you might say. The power creep in the game was getting to like ridiculous levels. Like I played a game last night, just as an anecdote, where I got the anomaly. And by the way, anomalies are going out the game. I think they might have gone out today or tomorrow. I'm not sure when this video goes out. But I got the anomaly, which made cards cost 1 less. Went up against a hand buff Demon Hunter, Death Knight deck, and they played the card that summons 2 copies of itself, and it'd been buffed by +4/+4. They played that on turn 3, so they got like, I can't remember what it is in total. It was like 1521 of stats on turn 3. Then on turn 4, and I was playing Mage, so I actually had some counterplay to it, and I killed one of them. The next turn, the other one had got hit by a 4/4 buff, so by turn 4 they played like 1342 of stats, which was like, well, I guess I'll just lose then. So there has been like a huge amount of power creep in the game. I think at some point they have to address it, and a set cycle is just going to have to be weaker. It's an odd time to do it though, because normally you'd want to do it at the start of a cycle, not the end, and this is the end of a cycle, right? That being said, and everything's being said and done, I think the reason this set feels really weak is that a lot of the legendaries are pretty underwhelming, but actually a lot of the tech cards in here and just almost the card fillers, like the class filler cards, I think are pretty decent. So even though there's not going to be these big overarching legendaries that you're going to build all your decks around, there's a lot of these cards I think will slot into pre-existing decks. I think that's going to be a little bit of a sad time, though, because, you want to play the new stuff, right? And I think the new stuff is just going to be outclassed. You don't really want to play the old stuff with some new cards in it, but I hope to be proven wrong. I hope that there are decks and, ideas that I've not come up with, that I've not had the theory craft for, and we're going to have a nice brand new fresh set. So yeah, I'll see you again on the 14th, 12th? I can't remember the releases now. I think it's the 14th, right, when the set comes out. If you have any, Theorycraft decks that you think that I should try on day 1, why not leave them in the comments below, and I'll have a look at it. I have got a list right now of decks in an Excel file and deck codes. I think I've got like 22 decks. I'm obviously not going to play all of them on day 1, but it was just kind of like my decks, my theories, and like how I would build these decks, including some of the decks I don't think are going to work. We'll definitely run those on day 1, regardless. Anyway, let me end. Thanks for the support of the channel. It's meant a lot to me, and I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.